Anne Walling. I'm Scottish. Small, tight, small, fierce Scottish ladies, the last lady said. And we've had a wonderful set of presentations looking forward. I'm afraid this is the light part of the program, and we're looking backwards. I went to medical school in Scotland. Hey, in 1969. Don't tell me you weren't conceived then. And I am wearing the dress I bought in 1971 to graduate. Which just proves that Scottish people never throw anything out. And also that it used to come to here, but I didn't have the nerve. So, let's get serious. For the first time in American medicine, we have fairly large numbers of women entering their 50s, 60s, and beyond. And Kim is very serious. And we were doing serious research about the issues in the workplace for these women. And we have fascinating results that you will all read when the paper comes out. But one of our focus groups went rogue, and I really am cursed. How do we do this? Yay. Nope. I've been doing it.
No, it's changing there. Oops. Honestly,
this happened to me yesterday,
too. Where you
too.
need a medical student.
Is there anyone under 30 in the room?
Yeah, so it's changing on here, but not on the screen.
Anyway, one of our focus groups didn't want to talk about problems, and we couldn't stop them talking about stories. These were women physicians in Wichita who had all gone to medical school in the 60s and 70s. There was a big change about 75, so we just got fascinated with their stories. Are you going to work at that? And we decided just to try and capture the stories of the women who went to medical school in the 60s and 70s. And remember, it was 10% to 20%. In 74, it jumped up to about 20-30%, so it was very different. So we're talking about the ladies at the extreme right there. And the first question we thought was, why, when you're growing up in the 50s, I mean, think Mad Men, think of those TV programs. You're growing up immediately after the war. I was growing up in Scotland. Everything about medicine was male. If you know who Dr. Kildare was, you're too old. And the gender roles were very clear. And this is a continual theme, you know. You're female, therefore you're a nurse. And we asked your motivations. We were extremely surprised because there were, as far as we know, only 3 women physicians in the immediate area at that time. There were a few ladies there who said they were motivated by seeing female role models. That was a surprise. But the general theme was very vocational, very wanting to help, wanting to change the world. Well, not wanting to change the world, but just wanting to help. And there were a few ladies who already had careers in the health professions, and they were just fed up being at the bedpan end. They were not wanting to be handmaidens anymore. So those were our themes about going into medicine. We're growing up in the 50s, and our families ranged from a very wealthy family with lots of assets to a lady being brought up by a widowed mother with 6 children on a farm in Kansas. Kansas. I speak Kansan, by the way. I've been there for 30 years. They think I'm native, so I'm okay on the census questions. Families were really all over the map, some pretty hostile, some supportive. Fathers were generally very important and quite supportive. You go, girl. Some of the mothers had had careers cut short. They had maybe had jobs during the war and then were sent back afterwards. So the frustrated mothers were very supportive. And I'll let you guess what my mother did in the Scottish system. In general, though, the families thought, yes, you can do it, but why put yourself through all that pain and hassle? And in Scotland, it's not done to sort of show off too much. And it was thought to be a little bit out there. And who the hell do you think you are? which was actually said by my great aunt, who lived in Edinburgh, which is why I did not apply to Edinburgh Medical School. Because she thought I should just stay with her for 6 years. So in high school, it just wasn't on the radar. And if you mentioned it, there was this sort of, yes, dear, well, but, nurse. One lady told a story about her father having to go down to make sure she could get into the maths and science classes because the girls had domestic science, which was cooking, and commercial subjects, which was typing and shorthand. Actually, I should have done that, but I didn't. This idea kept coming up if I was just as smart as the guys, but they were getting pushed forward and I wasn't. And the only girl in the class really started there. I know it's the dark ages. But it was a very difficult time, not just for us, but for the society. There was the Vietnam War, there was the civil rights. I remember not being able to get into a lecture one day on campus because it was closed for a sit-in and a riot. And we were changing. I mean, our skirts got shorter, Beatles came out, sex, drug, and rock and roll, and nobody my age will tell you what they did in the summer of '68. I was on a Greyhound bus going around America for $99, which was stupid but wonderful. College. Even enrolling in physics, it was always physics. I mean, these are ladies sitting talking. There was no alcohol, but if we'd had alcohol, it would have been amazing. I couldn't get into physics, had to enroll 4 times to get the courses I wanted. And then this attitude of, you're a waste of space, you're taking up a guy's place. And this paradox over and over again of being both very exposed and very vulnerable in the class and being invisible and being hidden. I'm getting all this positive vibe from people. You were there. We were stupid, weren't we?
We had fun there.
Well, speak to her later. I was I was down the front writing down everything. My husband was in the back with the guys. But I love this picture. It just sort of picks it up, and the guy next to her looks so uncomfortable. But it wasn't just coming from the guys. Over and over again, we've said this is not a male-female thing. The other girls, it was not cool to do medicine. It was not cool to do the sciences. There was sort of the girls, the guys, and the female meds. We were a sort of third sex, off limits or sort of weird. So it really was lonely, but we kept on there. Now, remember, we are talking to the ones who succeeded, the ones who stayed, the victims, the tragic cases of people who lost or put their dreams away, didn't get there, even the suicides. So but there's this idea of, I can do this, I'm going to do this, but once you've said you're going to do it, you can't get out because you're too proud to get out, which is probably why I stuck with it. Now we have admissions. We have pages and pages and pages of direct quotes of what happened during admissions. They're hilarious. They're tragic, they're hilarious, they're funny. And these are the ladies who got in. And the quotas were real. Sometimes they were official, sometimes they were unofficial, but they were real. And the attitudes of the ladies we were talking to, the successful ones, were, well, that's 9 places for everybody else. And there were aptitude tests that one lady had to take. And this last quote was a lady interviewing at a very prestigious East Coast school that I won't name, but begins with a large H. And she got so upset, and she's a lovely, dainty little lady. She got so upset by the questions that she just walked out. And she tells the story of being chased down the high street and asked to come back. And she came back and finished the interview. And then she paused dramatically and said, and I turned them down. She's a great character. So these are direct quotes. And we have pages of these. Again, this sense of you're a bad investment, you're going to take up space, you don't have the stamina, and you're really too pretty for this, dear. Why don't you become a nerd? And the ladies who were in relationships, there were very few of us, were asked if their male partner approved and was ready for the duration. I know. But everyone's telling these awful stories with fun and laughter. And of course, this just was a recurring theme. And a nurse in those days was a handmaiden. They were not co-professionals. They had frilly hats and white tights. So we get into med school. I got into the old yearbooks, and if you ever want to reaffirm your vocation, go look at the old yearbooks. Some of them are absolutely pornographic, but this is the KU class, 1970. We found 3 girls in there, somewhere, but everything about it was male. It was assumed it was a male place, it was a male thing. And this is the faculty. Love the pants on the guy in the front. All male faculty. Actually, 3 women interns, which was a breakthrough year. I think it was in the paper that we had interns. And the guys, you were in the class. I think I had 5 girls in my class, and we were all down the front. The guys were all in the back. And the guys were generally supportive, sort of, they're here, sisters, okay. But there were some who were pretty upset, but they never could or did intervene when we were being harassed. They probably couldn't, but they certainly didn't. There were a couple of girls told stories about guys being inappropriate, but the other guys policed them. The other guys kind of told them, no, she's in the class, she's got a place, we're going to get through this. And I suppose it was that, we're going to get through this. Again, this idea of paradoxically being very exposed, but yet very invisible. There was overt stories of harassment and physical and social isolation. It really was quite an adventure. But the ladies talked a lot about the practical things, and Kim pointed out to me that they opened the door and let us in, but they didn't make anything ready. There was nothing prepared. Like there wasn't two spacesuits. Remember, there was only 1 spacesuit. So let's have women in, but okay. And I was in Britain, but the American girls were really hung up on scrubs. We had to wear professional dress at all times, high heels and suits, and our skirts had to cover our knees. None of us owned skirts that covered our knees. It was 1968, 1969, We were, okay, stupid, but we had to go down and buy skirts that covered our knees, and we kept them in our lockers at the Royal Infirmary, and we had to get there early to put on our skirts. And but in America, there were stories about you had to wear a scrub dress, but the nurses wouldn't give you any scrub dresses, and the nurses wouldn't let you in the nurses' changing room. So you had to change somewhere else. So you changed in the toilet, or you changed in a closet. And one lady said she was on OB and she was always running, so she just wore her scrubs under her clothes and stripped as she ran down the corridor. And these stories were told with humor. And I know I need to rush. Call rooms, of course, couldn't sleep because in case you assaulted someone in the night or were assaulted in the night. And the nurses were of 2 types. There were the old guard, often ex-military nurses. Some of them were wonderful, most of them were awful. And the young ones who were trying to marry doctors, so you were a problem. And it was just an ingrained sexist environment. Women were objects. This we are ashamed of. The KU yearbook had a Playboy theme, complete with pornographic images and a centerfold. And you just were in this constant paradox. You wanted to be attractive and feminine, but you didn't want to be a pushover. And can you not take a joke? Ha ha ha. Yeah. So, not particularly proud of it. Getting into residency was another adventure. I'll just skip through residency a little bit. And then the inevitable, if you got pregnant, there was just confusion.
Thanks. And thank you very much. And so as Dr. Wallen said, these women, as Dr. Walling said, these women fought to get into medicine, but then when they were allowed in, the institution wasn't ready for them. That wasn't just for these decades, as we know, that's still an issue. I was the first female orthopedic resident in our program, and that was a big consternation where I would change scrubs in the nurse's locker room or in the restroom. So it has never changed. So once these women did get into residency or into practice, what would they do with someone who became, oh my God, someone would become pregnant? There were issues with needing to use sick leave. Well, if you use sick leave for this, what if you did develop an illness and you needed to take additional time? The attendings couldn't believe that these women would become pregnant because I guess there's supposed to be a better time to try to do this. As Ann mentioned, we did these focus groups, and the reason that we did this, it's important to know what these women went through and what we're still going through, because we're facing this oncoming tsunami of women in their 60s and 70s. What have they been through? What are they currently going through? How can we try to help them in their careers? Because unless we figure that out, things aren't going to change. And so a decade or 2 decades from now, when women are in their 60s and 70s in medicine, unless we fixed it now, it's not going to be fixed for them. And so what we did after we ran the focus groups, the next step that we took is we did a national survey of women physicians in the US over the age of 60. That will be coming out for publication soon. And what we found is that it's not just issues with pregnancy or issues with pregnancy during residency. This is a career-long issue of needing to take time off to take care of family. Women are expected to be the caretakers in the family. And so I think it's great that we're continuing to talk about maternal leave, but we really need to expand that to family leave. This needs to be career-long. As you'll see in our data when it comes out, half of these women over the age of 60 are still a caretaker for somebody. 20% are the primary caretaker for grandchildren. So even though the pregnancy is a huge issue, maternity leave is a huge issue, this doesn't necessarily get better with time unless we consider the entire scope of what women are expected to do. We had one woman physician in these focus groups who is a R01 funded researcher in breast cancer. She set up our breast cancer center. She is an awesome researcher and clinician. But she said she comes from a large family. She is the only woman of, I think, 5 or 6 siblings. Yet every time their parents became ill, she was the only professional. She was the one who was expected to take time off from her practice and her research to take care of her ill parents. That doesn't mean she didn't want to do that, but at what point do the men kind of step up to the plate and take care of that? So overall, these women in our focus groups thought that being a woman physician was a wonderful experience, although a woman in one of the focus groups that I ran said that her career was great, but now that she had reached this point in her career, this was the first time that she ever felt vulnerable because she had no role model. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know what to do with her career and what retirement would actually look like. But these women thought that, again, their careers were great. They wouldn't do anything else. However, there was this concern that between work and family, they didn't have anything else. It's almost as though they had lost their persona. They lost who they were because they were constantly doing something for someone else, either taking care of their patients, their husband, their family. But then who are you beyond that? And in part of our survey study, what we see is that there's a great deal of issues with isolation, because as you're facing the end of your career, the children are grown up and they're out of the house, and your spouse may be divorced, deceased, demented, something. The relationship isn't there. So what do you have left? What do you have as your anchor? You have your career. Well, as you're facing issues with wanting to start to slow down your practice, you may be facing gender bias or ageism issues in practice. If you're losing that too, then who are you beyond that? And so I think that's too something that we can take back. One of the questions we asked of these women is, what would you tell your younger self, or what would you tell younger physicians? Is to maintain your health and maintain who you are, maintain your personality, because if it's only your career and your family, those aren't going to go on in perpetuity, and then who are you beyond that? So again, they thought, though, medicine was a wonderful experience. They thought to some degree that what they had gone through were unique circumstances, and as Ann has clearly demonstrated, there were unique circumstances, but there's some things that haven't changed. Although we are 50% of the medical students, are we actually accepted in that role? Are we accepted as leaders? Are we anticipated to be leaders? Are we allowed to progress through the ranks? And so, although what women in the current generation of medical students experiencing is different from that standpoint, what happens when they're out of the sort of protected environment of medical school and residency? When they go to practice, is the system ready for them? Is the system ready to help support their careers? But overall, the women thought that one of the ways to address this was to be positive, to be pleasant. But that can only go on for so long. Eventually, we need to speak up and affect change. So the stories should be preserved, and this is one of the reasons we did this. Again, this is the first generation of a substantial number of older women physicians. We need to know what they've been through, to help them in their careers and hopefully to improve things as we move forward. So we'd like to thank everyone involved from the University of Kansas. This was funded from the Giambalvo grant from the AMA Foundation. I'd like to thank the Medical Society of Sedgwick County and all of our collaborators. So thank you.
So thank you very much to Dr. Walling and Dr. Templeton. We can take 2 concise questions. Okay. And just behind you there with glasses. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a medical student. My name is Elise Berlenberg. I'm a medical student interested in pursuing subspecialty surgery here at New York University School of Medicine, and I'm incredibly grateful to the women who have come before me. As it was mentioned yesterday, I stand on the shoulder of giants. And today we highlighted a lot of stories of medical women who were supporting those beneath them and bringing them up. However, in academic medicine, there's also been citation of a phenomenon called the Queen Bee phenomenon, where women in leadership in medicine tend to be harder on female trainees than their male counterparts. And I'm just wondering, is there a place for this, because it does cause trainees to become stronger over time, or is it a purely destructive bias? And also, as someone who's in training, do you have any advice for someone who is going through training and feel as if they're being unfairly treated compared to their male counterparts in education?
Thank you.
So yes, the Queen Bee phenomenon is real, unfortunately. I think the feeling is, I did it, so you can do it too. Nobody helped me, so you're not going to get any help either, because it makes you stronger. And no, all it does is wear us down and get us burned out. So it's real. If you have someone that you're going to advise or support and that's what you're getting, look somewhere else. The thing to remember is that mentors and supporters don't need to be in your own institution, which is why it's important to belong to your specialty organizations, because you can, for the vast majority, belong as a medical student and resident. That gives you, and most of them have a women in whatever, orthopedics, whatever. So they have a broad network throughout the United States. They can find somebody else to be your mentor and supporter. And also, don't neglect the men. Men can also be great, and having men as mentors and supporters actually can be very useful, because they're the ones in power. And so if you really need a supporter to get you on the right committee or right position or whatever, they're going to be the ones to enable you to do that. If I can make a brief aside on burnout, we talked about burnout. Dr. Farzana Hafizullah is here, and if anybody's interested in burnout, we have surveys because we're doing a study. But the more that you are, so she'll have those available for you, but so the more you're exposed to the Queen Bee phenomenon, the more you're going to get burned out, and it's not worthwhile putting up with it. If you think that you're a victim of gender bias, first of all, talk to someone else just to kind of bounce it off of them to make sure that is real and not just perception, because sometimes you get burned out, perceptions can change. But there's always backup for medical students and graduate and residents. You've got GME for the residents. You've got your medical school. Talk to somebody about it, because the more it gets ignored, the more it gets perpetuated. So just talk and get some help.
Okay, just one more concise question. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for your time. Cynthia Emery from Wake Forest School of Medicine, North Carolina. What resources are available for dual physician families where they may be thinking about parental care, elder care as they move along in their careers?
Is that for me? You can take that. I'll turn it to Ann, because I would say close to nothing. But
Well, I always tell my husband that I had to marry him, because I was going to be a resident in the Royal Infirmary, and we lived in the infirmary, and there wasn't a space for women. 10 residents shared a bathroom, so I solved that problem by marrying one of the others. I'm still married to the same guy, and we have 3 children. There is no magic. Anyone who knows the answer is probably in this room. You balance 2 careers. I don't know how to do it nowadays. I know how we did it. You try your best, but I would urge you to always respect your spouse. Listen to him or her, and listen to yourself. Sometimes things don't have to happen right away. There are times when you do actually take a position and just rest, like an actress for a little while, not for too long. Please, whatever you're doing, stay active and keep writing. Even if you're just writing reflective stories or patient stories, case histories, and even if they don't get published, stay very active and stay engaged. Support your spouse, support yourself. Kids are quite resilient. You fortunately have financial resources to purchase help. Don't do guilt. Celebrate. Pay people to do the things that are drags on you, like housework. My mother was ashamed that I didn't clean my own house, but you know. The only good thing in housework is it gives you time to think about that next project you're going to do. Do the grant while you're doing the dishes. But pay for the things and be choosy about where you put your time and your energy, because those are your only assets. Take your knocks, learn from them and get up. And trust, love, and damn well go for it.
I would just make the comment, and unfortunately, they're really, and this is why these kind of meetings are great, because you can come up with ideas like that. There aren't resources out there, because this is the first time that we have women physicians who are old enough to have parents who are aging and know how to deal with them. So that's something we need to look at, because it's not out there.
Okay, so thank you to all our speakers. Did you have...
I've been asked to invite all women over 60 to get together for storytelling and drinks.
That was important to say. So everybody caught that, storytelling and drinks. Okay.